This is Papa Smurf. You're listening to Our Lifestyle, the podcast, with ODB and the mayor.
You're listening to Our Lifestyle, the podcast, brought to you by Custom Car Show Productions, which includes Orange Beach Invasion, Scrapin the Coast, Sicknick, and Slamber Party. Make sure you search on Facebook Scrapin the Coast, Scrapin the Coast Show on Instagram. Also, Sparkles Detail. Till Tim and Tanya, ODB and the mayor sent you. We out here. Peace.
Yeah. Bone Thugs and Harmony. And Steve Marley. Yeah. Soon I'll be coming home. Been around the world like a rolling stone. See the whole world wide through my own eyes. Been a long time coming. A million miles, I'm still running. Trying to find my way back to my roots where the truth does lay at. And I say that I'm trying to go home. Take me somewhere that my mind mode is on free, and my time zone is on freeze. Everything stopped. I'm gonna need a little bit of time to get myself together.
ODB, Our Lifestyle, the podcast, in association with All Time Low magazine for mini truckers by mini truckers. Make sure you visit atlmagazine.com, click on online store, and subscribe to the 2018 subscription for $50. Additionally, our friends over at Hammered Weekend Wear approve this message. Visit hammeredweekendwear.com. That's HAMMERD weekendwear.com. Order some gear and make sure you tell them Our Lifestyle, the podcast, sent you. Peace out to Rich, Beth, and our homie Ron Perkins. We out ya. Enjoy this episode with Billy Bob.
I hear home calling back for me. I think it's time I take a flight to elevate my mind and look at my life and try to get right. The big lights blinding me, they bright. I've been in darkness most of my life.
Yo, it's Our Lifestyle, the podcast, episode 60. Yes, you heard that right, 6-0. This one's titled Chris, Billy Bob, Mull. If you don't know Chris, man, you're going to get to know him on this episode. It's Real Deal Holyfield. I want to say what up, Airhead Nation. We appreciate you guys continuing to listen. We've also got Miggity Mike, the mayor, in the house. What's going down, Mike?
What's going on, Jay? Welcome back. Welcome back to land. How was your cruise there, buddy?
Man, it went great. It was from Saturday to Saturday. I usually get a little stir crazy, Mike. And I was a little weary about, 7 days, kind of pretty much no internet. But I tell you, at the end of the week, it was fantastic. I barely had enough internet to check Twitter here and there, which I think was a blessing and a curse. I got to put my phone down all week except for taking some photos. And, man, I feel rejuvenated to keep on keeping on for 2018, Mike.
So where'd y'all go? Where was y'all stops?
So we left Port Canaveral, first day at sea. The next day, if I remember correctly, we went all the way to Dominican Republic. So that was pretty cool, checking out the island there. Of course, Dominican shares the island with Haiti, which is crazy. You know, they've had that earthquake and stuff. We pretty much, at the port that we were at, it's all like farmland. So, we did some tours there. Boom, trying to think here in my head. The next day, start kind of heading back towards home, which, at that point, you're pretty far away. And then we went to, U.S. Virgin Islands, or I could have those backwards, but then U.S. Virgin Islands, then San Juan, Puerto Rico. You get to see the old and the new San Juan. Then one of the last stops is Grand Turk, and that's the last stop before the last day at sea, and then you come home. So, man, it's a lot of miles and a lot of food and good times, brother.
Absolutely. It's just you and the wife?
Yeah, so Maddie and I, and then we had her good friend, my friend as well, Dina, and then her, at the time, fiance, he went, staying the man. He's a good dude. He's, about my age, a couple years younger, so we got along, really kind of did a lot on the ship in terms of basketball, booze, food, you name it. Then he got engaged on that was his master plan, to get engaged to Dina. So it all really worked out, man.
Good times, man. How was the weather?
The weather was great. The worst day of the weather was coming back that Saturday. We pulled up to the port and we looked outside and we're like, oh, man, it's Port Canaveral. It's all dreary out. But every other thing was perfect, man.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, it's good, man. It's good you got to get out. And I can tell you this, though. I'm glad you guys had a great time on your cruise. And congratulations again on celebrating, 10 years, I believe?
10 years, man.
Yes, congratulations. And but you missed one hell of a show, brother.
I heard.
Brian and the rest of the Forbidden Fantasy crew put on one hell of a show. The resort, it's one of those places where you show up. We got there, 3:30 in the morning Vegas time. We come walking into the front lobby, and they're in there partying already. They're partying still. We come walking in, and they're in there hollering and screaming and hooting and tooting, and right there at the front lobby, and beers just a flowing. And it's like, wow, we know we're in Cali, we're in Vegas, baby. We're definitely on the West Coast. And these guys over here partying 3:30 in the morning and having a damn good time. So you definitely missed a good show, man. And I definitely, next year, and I got to quit saying the word definitely, but you definitely got to make sure that you make it out there. If not next year, the following year. Hats off to Brian and his crew because they did an awesome job. You show up, you had a nice resort. The buffet was great. Tons of different restaurants there inside. They had sit down restaurants. They had quick, pick me up restaurants all there. So you didn't even have to leave the resort once you got there. And then just, it's all the grass areas where they park all the cars, all the finished cars. Cause they got and it's right there on the Colorado River. And, our boy Graham, he had his buddy out there and he had this big old 30-foot, boat. So we went down the Colorado River, Saturday, which was awesome. And the weather was absolutely gorgeous the whole time we were there. It was hot, but it was a nice breeze, and like I said, you're right there on the river. So you got that nice breeze coming in and, the pictures, this perfect place for pictures. You got the palm trees and the water in the background. They had the big old pool. Everybody was having a good time. If you weren't, out of the car show area, you were in the pool, in the casino. So it was all right there. It didn't have to go nowhere. Got to hang out with our boy Greg Miller and Sean Randall, Mr. Vanilla Ice. So, we had a good time, had a real good time. And we met Graham out there. He actually came and picked us up from the airport. He picked us up Friday at like midnight when we got in, or Thursday at midnight when we got in. And then, of course, never been, as many times as I've been out to Vegas, we get in, I'm like, man, I'm a little hungry. So we get in there and In-N-Out Burger.
I knew it.
Had to go to In-N-Out. I've never been.
Man.
Never been. Everybody always talks about it. And so we stopped at In-N-Out Burger and got us a bite to eat and some good stuff, man. Definitely not your normal fast food restaurant for sure. And then we headed on over an hour. I think it was an hour and a half drive from the airport. And we headed over, and it was a good time. Definitely got to make sure you get out there. The way the setup was beautiful. You had the unfinished stuff, and the vendors were all set up in the parking lot around the corner, and then all the finished trucks were all in the grass area. And then you had some, like ViAir. As soon as you pulled in, ViAir was all set up right out there. Got to see Morgan and the rest of the guys. Ryan and talk with Tim with ViAir. Of course, he works in the tech department, and he knows all the ins and the outs of all the new the new compressor that ViAir just released. So he wants to come on, tell us all about it, and tell us why it's faster, quieter, and all that good stuff. So he'll be on later on. To talk about the new compressors, because we definitely support ViAir and they support us. And then got to see a lot of the West Coast guys out there. We got to talk to Ruben, got to talk to Mike, got to meet Mike in person. We just had him on. So it was good to, actually meet him in person. And then, of course, Billy Bob. You guys wait till y'all hear this episode with Billy Bob, Chris Mull, because, the guy has got story after story after story and got some of the baddest builds out there. And he's still at it. He's back up. He's just finished our listener Danny. His last name is slipped my mind here right now, but Danny met Danny.
We got Danny Strain Is his homie.
And him and Billy Bob just finished his S10 and got to see that out there. So Danny, man, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. It was good, nice meeting you. And, it's badass S10. If you guys haven't seen that, I did post it up on our Lifestyle, the podcast page there, and popped up Danny's truck. Super nice guy. And he's a listener, and we appreciate that. So what I'm saying is if you haven't made it out to Forbidden Fantasy, you've got to go check it out. It's one of those shows you show up and you hang out for the rest of the weekend, man. It was awesome. Had a great time, and definitely look forward to doing it again. That's for sure.
You know it, Miggity Mike. And if you want to check out Danny Strain, it's Idaho Dime, IDAHODIME 89 on Instagram. As Mike mentioned, he did post that up. So if you look back a couple days, you'll see that really clean, a square body S10 laid out, single cab. So, the other thing I want to mention, Mike, is I definitely appreciate, we as a team will, tag team the podcast. And, you were out there, you took lots of photos, you posted those. We had well over, I think it was 120,000 impressions just from that week alone, which is primarily condensed into just 2/3 days of show coverage. What we did was, Mike, you did a great job. We did the @FFF for Forbidden Fantasy _show. So if you follow that that Instagram handle, that's the official Forbidden Fantasy show, which, was kick-ass. So job well done. You mentioned Graham. Graham had the Titan out there from Jimmy's Rod and Customs, as you mentioned. And then also Chick's Ride, the famous S10 built by Jimmy's Rod and Customs. That was also out there thanks to Fester. So it was pretty cool that two East Coast, let's be specific, Florida rides were all the way out there in Nevada, in Laughlin, and biggity boom, they were right there together. So that had to be pretty cool to see those, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to know that Chick's Ride still looks as good as it's in such a good shape, man. And just everybody all weekend just looking at it and just like, wow, this truck is fucking awesome. And Jimmy fucking nailed it, man. He absolutely nailed it. And it's definitely in good hands, that's for sure. Got to meet Fester. First time ever meeting him in person. And he's definitely got some of the baddest rides in all of mini truck history. That's for damn sure.
Hells yeah, man. Well, it was a great show. I did want to say that we're going to have Brian on the next episode to talk about it. It's great that, Mike and so many of the mini truckers in Florida, a couple of guys even drove out there, which is insane. Goat, of course, but you had the South Florida guys, as I mentioned, on 59. Then you had Mike and you had others that flew all the way out there. It's definitely real deal Holyfield when you've got a show that's drawing people in from coast to coast, really different continents, I should say, because there were some guys from the Japanese magazine. I'll look their name up on Instagram here. It's Shin, and I'm going to say it wrong, but if you just type in SHINGO, and you'll see it's Shingo _CTM_GRD and then FFF. He's with Custom Trucks Mag. He was even out there. So, again, he's from Tokyo, Japan. You had people from all over. It's insane what the scene does to bring people together. And, our Lifestyle, the podcast, is always there, whether we're there in person or we're there in theory, to, bring you this coverage. And we appreciate everyone listening. Now, Mike, I did want to also, kind of transition. But before we do, I wanted to see if you had any parting words for that kind of quick recap of Forbidden Fantasy.
Well, the only thing I can tell you is there was a big discussion about, how big shows were and who was there, who wasn't there, who was supporting, who wasn't supporting. I can tell you this. Forbidden Fantasy might not have been the biggest show, but I tell you what, the quality that was at Forbidden Fantasy was like, wow. I mean, they have some top-notch rides out on the West Coast, and they were definitely at Forbidden Fantasy. So it's one of those things, guys, East Coast guys, if you haven't been, you definitely got to make a trip out there. And it's a damn good time, and there's some top-notch stuff out there. And a lot of the stuff you see at SEMA, a lot of the stuff that you see in the magazines, I don't even know how many damn cover trucks were there, but there was a bunch of them there. And a bunch of good people, man, a bunch of good dudes. And, I appreciate Ruben and Mike and Chris. Got to meet Chris Burns too. I do apologize, Chris. First time he's a listener as well. And can't forget, I knew I was going to forget somebody. And so he's always at the shop. And he's always got the, Our Lifestyle, the podcast playing when he's there. So we definitely appreciate that. Got to meet Ruben's wife. I say wife because, I apologize, but I think it's his girlfriend. I think it's how he introduced her. I apologize, Ruben. I don't want to get you in trouble. I don't want to rush things for you, buddy. But just a bunch of good people, man. And it's good times and some badass rides out there and just top notch stuff, man. Hats off to Brian and the rest of the Forbidden Fantasy. And congratulations to Erica, because she just got her truck, was there and was there first show was there at Forbidden Fantasy. So congratulations to Erica and her husband Jose. Man, he nailed it. Did a great job, and just look forward to seeing those guys again next year.
Yeah, man. Well, like the Dr. Dre track, East Coast Killer, West Coast Killer. They definitely killed it on the West Coast for this one, and we give them hands down for the continued effort that they put in to keep that show going. I know it's many years strong. I'm looking forward to heading out there next year. I will make it. I promise you that. Now, we do have a few scene updates before we roll into Chris Mull's interview. I did, right before we went into audio recording, I saw Sean Mahaney's wife. She had a real emotional post on Facebook and I believe Instagram, and she mentioned her late husband, Sean Mahaney. His birthday would have been on April 17th. She had a great post that talked about, hey, for his birthday, if you're a motorcycle guy or you're someone out there that's just obviously on the roads, look out for motorcycles. Sean Mahaney, gone way too soon. So rest in peace to Sean. Now, Mike, I didn't get a chance to mention on episode 59, I had it in my notes, but Street Trucks Mag, now this is not the current issue because since we recorded, the new or May issue has come out. However, the Slamfest coverage was in April 2018 issue by our friend Joe Greaves, fellow Floridian, and that's the issue with the Delmo built 6-page feature of Old Gold on the cover. I believe I mentioned the cover in Delmo's build and whatnot, but I don't recall mentioning the Slamfest coverage. It's on page 54 to 50 or pages 54 to 57. Dude, what awesome coverage, man, from Slamfest last year.
Yeah, Jay, appreciate it, man. Thanks for bringing that up. Slamfest, new Street Trucks magazine coverage is in there. Thanks to Joe Greaves. And for all you guys, definitely check us out. Pre-registration at minimadness.com. It's open, outside spots, indoors. We have the indoors as well. We got 50,000 square foot air conditioned building. And if you're interested in being indoors, let me know, hit me up, and we'll get you approved and get you on there. And all you got to do is pre-register. PayPal, it's all online. You guys have been after me forever about that, so we finally got it going now. And hit us up, man. We'd love to have you guys October 13th and 14th. We look forward to having you guys, Slamfest 27.
Hells yeah. And if I did mention that one on last episode, that may have slipped my mind. Many things don't, but that one may have. Now, the May 2018 issue has arrived. That came when I was on my cruise. It has the Trey 5 C10, which was in ViAir's booth at SEMA 2017. Truck is amazing, really badass shoot by the editor Kevin Aguilar. Now, I mentioned the Truck of the Year on episode 59, talking with Bob Grant. But speaking of Bob Grant, he was mentioned in this new issue. There's a segment in there about being the builder of this 59 Suburban. So I thought that was pretty ironic. We just had Bob on, and boom, there Bob is in Street Trucks. That new issue is the May issue. Still waiting on the new Truckin'. As you know, these magazines kind of flow out different times, and the last Truckin' is the same one that I had when we did the last episode. It is June already issue, so pretty soon we'll have July. Sounds crazy, I know. The couple other updates I wanted to share. Chevy, late last week, they mentioned in different articles that there's about 1,500 workers that are being laid off and or ability to transfer from their Ohio plant. And the only reason I bring that up is, believe it or not, it's because of declining sales from their Cruze, CRUZE vehicle. I thought that was pretty ironic because, that's more the fuel-efficient car. And a lot of the articles that I've read lately are that the trucks are what's selling, whether it be Ford, GM, so on and so forth. There's a high margin on those, and of course in America, we love our trucks. There's no doubt about it. There's a cool article on thedrive.com where it talks about GM cuts hundreds of jobs at the Cruze plant in Ohio. Bottom line here, I think some of these folks will be able to relocate to other facilities, but I think even with the gas prices that we've seen that are crept up, I know diesel's about $3 a gallon where I'm at. Bottom line is people are still buying these trucks, and we really don't give a shit. We put our fuel in and we drive, Mike. So I thought that just was worth mentioning on our Lifestyle of the podcast.
No, and I believe that Cruze replaced the Cavalier, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I think it did. Yeah, there you go. I was looking at the photos earlier, and I was like, what does the Cruze look like? And I think you're right. It's that real small sedan. And bottom line, sedan sales have been declining. Even the Continental that they brought back, that Ford did, the Ford Motor Company, it was struggling. There was rumors that they were going to cut it after the year. Now there's rumors they're going to do a suicide door. Who knows? But, we'll have to see. Now, the other item I wanted to mention is if you love hip-hop as much as I do, make sure you check out on Netflix. It's called Rapture, Rapture. It's a really, really badass documentary. I haven't gotten through all the episodes. It's definitely top-notch. You're going to see Logic on there. You're going to see Nas. There's a lot of different hip-hop artists that are featured, and it's definitely worth watching, so check that out. Now, Mike, from a few sponsor updates before we roll into Chris's interview, I know Sparkles made the trek out to Forbidden Fantasy. It had to be cool to see them in the rig all the way on the West Coast, man.
Yeah, they had a little incident where the trailer started coming apart while they were driving out there. And but they got Goat helped them out, and good old duct tape, man. Nothing duct tape can't fix.
Hells yeah, that's crazy, man. One of my buddies, Paul, used to always remind me, they call it 100-mile-per-hour tape, man, because you could fix a plane, you could fix a trailer. I figured they'd be spraying some of them Croftgate products on it, maybe to kind of fill the hole, but yeah, sometimes you just got to rely on the good old duct tape, homie.
And it worked, because they duct taped it down, and they didn't have any problems with it until they got back home. They got it fixed.
Hells yeah, man. Well, Scrapin' the Coast is also coming very soon, so we just want to make sure those three words are ingrained in your mind, scrapinthecoast.com. We're going to have Greg on very soon to talk a little bit more, but Mike, any other insight into June 22nd through the 24th of 2018?
Well, they just released their entertainment today, and it looks like Tone Loc and Young MC will be performing at Scrapin' the Coast.
Dude, I love it. Now, here's something that's cool. Tone Loc has, he's an OG, and he's actually on Instagram as I think. So if you just look up rapper, Rapper, Tone Loc, Loc, you'll see. Now, he only has about 1,500 followers. I don't think a lot of people know, but just the other day I saw that Tone Loc had posted that he ran into Bobby Brown at LAX airport, and he was reminiscing that they were on tour together in 1989, almost 30 years ago. So, dude,
damn, hey, we getting old.
Yeah, two OGs, man. Isn't that badass for Scrapin' the Coast? So you've got, just to recap that there, we've got Tone Loc and
Young MC.
Young MC, man, dude, Young MC, and both of those guys, man. I mean, if you're not a child of the or if you're a child of the 80s, and those two artists don't bring back some good old feelings, man, dude, I don't know what will.
Well, before Scraping the Coast, Jay, we do have two shows coming up. One of them I'll be at. The other we will not make this year. But let's go ahead and mention we got Mini Truck Nats, and the week. Let's see, what is it? The last weekend of April, and then the first weekend of May, we got Battle in Bama. So definitely check out those two shows. You got Mini Nats and you got Battle in Bama. First, Mini Nats being the last weekend of April, and Battle in Bama being the first weekend of May. So definitely check those two shows out and support the scene, baby.
Yeah, you know it. And go on Instagram and give Battle in Bama a huge follow there. We're seeing guys out, like Jimmy's crew with the homie Mike and some of these guys that they're going to head out that way. Mike Hill, I should say. You can find Mike on Instagram. It's MH110377. He must be born on November 3rd, 77. But Mike Hill, he's got a sick Explorer that's being built. He's been working on it a long time. He's got photos here. He's a good dude. He posted up the iconic image the other day of Battle in Bama, and he said, "Who is ready for Battle in Bama May 4th through the 6th?" So, shout out to those guys for doing what they do, and they treated us really well last year. We had a great time. Some things kind of came up. We're not going to be able to make it this year. There's some things I've got going on at work. I know Mike, he's going to Mini Nats, so I wish him the best there. But Mike, anything else you got there, homie?
Jay, you know what? It's Monday. It's getting to that 9:30 mark, and I got to get up early in the morning tomorrow, brother.
Hell yeah! So I hear you, man. And I got one last thing. We've got one new iTunes rating. So big shout out to Big_Jake_1978. So that's Big Jake 1978. He gave us a 5-star rating. That's our 55th rating for those scoring at home. Make sure you follow Jake. He says hands down the best podcast out there. So we appreciate that. So with that being said, Mike, that's all I got. Thanks, Big Jake 78. And we appreciate everyone out there, brother.
Absolutely. Airhead Nation, we out.
We out here. Peace out. We'll see you on 61 late. Yo, it's ODB. This interview with Chris Billy Bob Mull is brought to you by Hammered Weekend Wear. Go to hammeredweekendwear.com, place an order, and let Ron Perkins know Our Lifestyle, the podcast, sent you. Enjoy this interview. Peace. Yo, it's Our Lifestyle, the podcast, episode 60. This is a milestone episode for us. I always love to call that out. We, Mike and I talked a lot on this episode, kind of in that intro, but we mentioned we've got Chris Billy Bob Mull, and man, he's a true OG. Chris, I just want to say thanks for coming on. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Jason. I really appreciate you having me on the show. I'm pretty honored to be a guest, and so thank you.
Man, you know it. One awesome thing is you just made the trek last night, and you're like, hey, man, I'm flexible, whatever you guys need. You made the trek from Washington all the way down to Nevada, and you're getting ready for Forbidden Fantasy. I know you're stoked, man.
I am stoked. I've never been to this show before, and it's been a couple years since I've gone to a big show. The weather down here is nice. This morning I walked through the parking lot and kind of took a browse at some of the cars and trucks here, and I mean there's some neat stuff here that I've never seen, so I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to good weather and checking out some nice trucks and cars and seeing up and meeting a bunch of people that I haven't talked to for a long time, so I'm looking forward to an enjoyable weekend.
Yeah, man. Well, Miggity Mike the mayor is there. He flew in from Florida. I told him to check you out, find you, so you'll definitely get a chance to slap hands with him. He's a good dude, and I know he's looking forward to meeting you. But, as we kind of get into this interview, I wanted, some folks know you as Billy Bob. I just got a chance to meet you, and obviously I know the trucks you've built and been tied to, but could you give the listeners like a little insight into who you are, man?
Well, that's a tough one. I'm just your average, car and truck enthusiast. And I've been building custom cars and trucks since I was 15, and been pretty fortunate throughout the years to be able to work for some cool shops and be able to be part of some, really cool, vehicles and rides over the years and do some neat things in the automotive scene. And I really don't know what to say other than that, maybe.
Yeah, no, I got you. And one thing that always is something that piques my interest, and I kind of asked Bob this on the last episode. So, like I wasn't a guy like where my dad didn't really wrench a lot and stuff, but did you get bit by the bug like in middle school, or was it like your dad taking you to shows? Like, how did you really feel like you just got sucked into the whole scene?
Like the custom car scene. Okay, well, it's kind of a funny deal. I was like a lot of people, my age, our age. I was into BMX bikes, always fixing them up, looking for different parts to put on them and that kind of thing. As a kid, when I was about 11 years old, my parents took me and some friends to watch this movie, and I think the actual movie we went to watch was the Apple Dumpling Gang.
Okay,
but it was a double feature, and the other movie playing was this movie called Corvette Summer that had Mark Hamill as the main character in it. And in the movie, he finds this Corvette, and he's in like a high school auto shop, and he customizes this Corvette and paints it, and is candy apple red with flames and everything. And after I watched that movie, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is so cool, so awesome. And I remember right after that, I started buying model cars of like Corvettes and that kind of thing, and putting models together. And pretty much, I think from that point on, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And it's kind of funny. I look back at that car now and I'm like, man, that thing's ugly as can be, but
yeah, it's weird how we get, yeah. And a lot of guys may not know that about you. And, that's the cool thing with us telling the story. And it's unique on how we all kind of got tied in. And it is funny, because I just Googled the movie. And then of course, of all things, it pops up. I don't know if it was a rebuild, but it was a photo of that Corvette that was at Gas Monkey Garage, and it looks like, I don't know if it was the one, but it sold for like $15,000 at Barrett Jackson. But it's crazy with the internet. I mean, we are talking. We're on different sides of the country. How you got involved in the scene, Corvette Summer. I do a Google image search and bam. But that's cool, man. I appreciate the insight, and it kind of puts the pieces of the puzzle together.
Right. And as a kid, I was kind of always mechanically inclined and always into that kind of stuff. I remember a story my dad was telling me, like when I was like 3 or 4 years old, I discovered the screwdriver and ripped apart an electric drill, took it all apart in pieces to see how it worked, I guess. And so, I was always like getting into things and trying to figure out how things worked or take things apart. So I think I kind of had that, ability, but my dad wasn't really a car guy. Nobody in my family was really that car guy. So I think that seeing that movie, it was like, whoa, to me, I didn't even care about the other movie at that point. It was like, man, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life,
Yeah.
So
it reinforces like certain things within our childhood. I think back to when I was growing up, the late 80s, and I was watching Gleaming the Cube, and then 3 years before that was Rad. And like those movies, played a big part of my life in terms of they pinpointed a certain thing that maybe I wasn't the best skateboarder, but I knew that culture and what those guys were doing, I liked it, And then when I saw mini trucks, I'm like, man, that's me. So, I appreciate the backstory. Now, one thing I wanted to, transition into is, getting to know you a little bit, Chris. You talked, I know we all kind of started in local clubs. You had an opportunity for a long time to be, for a good while, to be in Subculture, which is an awesome club. And then, like, now you're in a relaxed atmosphere. You've been in there for some time now. But, any kind of insight into, maybe how you got into RA? Like, what was that defining point that, where you got into that awesome club, man?
Well, like we'd mentioned prior to this interview, I was in a local club called Exclusive Innovations, and we put on a 3-day show there in the Northwest. We had in the mid 90s, actually got Lance from Mini Trucking to fly up and do some show coverage and had coverage in a magazine. And, not too long after there, we had 6 members of the club that I was in at the time get in a car wreck, and 4 of them died, and our club just kind of went to pieces. And then I joined Subculture after that, and Subculture was a great club. I loved the guys in there. And, like most people, you get older, kind of go your separate ways. Well, me being there in Washington where I live, there really wasn't any other members, and the club was kind of going a little dormant there for a little bit. And I was friends with Garrick that ran Street Source magazine, and he always tried to, joke around with me, and he'd be like, when are you going to leave the dark side and come join Relaxed? And I was friends with some guys in Relaxed. And so finally one day I started building this Volkswagen Bug, and I thought, well, I'm going to build another custom vehicle. And so I called Garrick, and I'm like, hey, I want to join Relax. I'd already made the phone call to Lance and Charles and went over with them, and they were understanding, sad to see me go, but understood why I was ready to move on.
Yeah, what the motivation was. Yep.
Right. I wanted to be with people that were more in my area, that I could go to shows where I lived and hang out with and be a part of. And so I called Garrick, and, Garrick's like, hey, well, you live in Washington, and we actually have somebody running the Oregon-Washington area now, and Ron Perkins. And he says, Ron? I'm like, yeah, I know Ron. So I gave Ron a call, and I've been a part of Relaxed ever since. And, I really enjoy it, so.
Yeah, and like you said, the rest is history. And, we'll talk a little bit about Ron, but Ron is a good guy. I know that there's a connection there with D-Blaze, that famous truck. And, Ron and Ruben said, hey, man, this would be a great guest. And I love when, we can meet other people that we know these trucks, but I never had a chance to really chop it up with you. Well, speaking of that, you posted, you have photos on your Facebook, and a lot of people know, and I'd like to spend some time talking about this Mazda pickup that you had. I mean, it's a famous, iconic truck, and I was blown away because I knew that it had been featured, because in my head I I'm like, okay, I got to go look through my magazines, and then you sent me some photos. I appreciate it. So can you tell us about this graphicked up masterpiece? I love the truck. Maybe just a little history, and I know it changed colors and that type of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We were talking about how I got into the scene and everything. Well, originally I really didn't like mini trucks. I did a lot of work on them. I right out of high school, I worked in the custom paint and body shop, and trucks would come in, and a lot of Chevy Loves and that back then, and we'd shave door handles and bed tailgate latches and bed hooks and stuff and paint them. Little graphics. Well, I was more into muscle cars and hot rods and that. And so I started doing paint and body work out of my parents' garage. I still lived at home, and my dad had a pest control company, and he had this Mazda pickup, and the lease was up on it. And so he said he was going to trade it in for another truck. And I asked him how much was left on the lease, and it was a couple $1,000. The truck was 3 years old at the time. So
okay,
I asked him, I said, can I just pay off the lease and keep the truck? And he's like, yeah, I think so. So that's what I ended up doing. And I thought, well, mini trucks were getting big. Actually, one of my best friends had this 78 Toyota at the time, and that was all just slammed down and stuff. And the guy around the corner from where I lived was president of the local mini truck club. So I thought, well, I'll get this truck and I'll make a shop truck out of it, and try to just use it for my business, maybe get a little more work out of it. Well, next thing you know, I'm looking through Mini Trucking Magazine and Trucking Magazine, and I'm ordering ground effects and, grills and cutting a walkthrough and, shell and all that kind of stuff. And so originally that Mazda was done in the early 90s, and it was mint green with these pink and turquoise scallops, ground effects, walkthrough and everything. And, a lot of people from the Northwest remember it from back then. And so I showed it a lot, did pretty good with it. Well, the truck had got keyed at one point, and I'd sold it.
Okay.
And the guy that I sold it to, he was racing somebody down a bridge and went to turn this corner and going too fast, and he wiped out the front of the truck. And
Damn.
It busted a wheel. Oh, yeah, busted a wheel. took out the ground effects, bent the chassis, all kinds of stuff. Well, he called me about it, and I ended up buying the truck back for pretty much next to nothing. And at that time, when I got it back, I was like, okay, I'm going to build a truck that, is going to be anything out here.
Yeah,
that was just where I was. Yeah, I'm like, okay, this thing's going to get, at that time, working in a hot rod shop, we didn't call it body drop, it was channeled.
Yep.
So I'm like, I'm going to channel this thing, I'm going to, and it was funny because back then, bags were, I don't know if they were right there at that time, but it was like, 94-ish, 95-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was like, originally I put 4-wheel air shocks on the thing, and then, channeled the thing, started shaving everything I could, all this kind of stuff. And then I went to, I believe, Spring Splash, maybe 95-ish,
mm-hmm.
but Brian General had an Astro van, and I'm not sure if that was the show or not, but it had airbags on it. And, I'd seen airbags on a street rod, back of a street rod before, and some other things. So I came back and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing. So the air shocks came out, the airbags went on. I built this cool notch, and, kept changing things, here and there until I got it right. And then, about 96, it was all smooth shaved, and I put it in a peach colored primer. And I remember, I bought these 17-inch centerline wheels, and at that time, for the wheels and tires, like $2,500. And at that time, it was a lot of money back
then. It was, and it's crazy because they were 17s, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, they were 17s, and I'd have people come up to me and go, those are way too big for a mini truck. Those are like a full-size wheel, which is funny to think about today,
I know.
But I took it to the show, like I said earlier, I was in this local club, and we flew Lance in. Well, Lance saw the truck, and, he's like, man, this thing's so cool. Keep in touch with me when this thing's finished. I want to put it on the cover,
Nice. Now, so, real quick, I was going to ask you, was the color, like, give us an idea, like, what color was the truck then?
It was a peach primer, like kind of a coral peach colored primer, and it wasn't painted yet. And I don't even think it had the engine in it yet, but all the engine compartment was smooth. And I put inner fender wells in there, which you didn't see much back then.
Uh-huh.
But the reason those were in there was because there in Washington, it rains all the time.
Yep.
Well,
and you drove your shit.
Driving a truck and back then you drove everything. So with the rain, you get that rain splashing up in there on a body drop truck with no inner fenders. And next thing you know, you're on the side of the road because all your electrical stuff's wet. So, anyways, so that him saying that he wanted to put it on the cover kind of motivated me, for the next few years. And I eventually got it painted, and it was originally had a smooth grill and a molded to the front bumper and Escort headlights in it and stuff. And it was finished. And I always tried to debut my truck every time I changed it at the show in Seattle at this Sitting Pretty show that was up there for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And so Mike Self had worked for the magazine at the time. For a short period of time, he was an editor there for Mini Trucking.
Uh-huh.
And he actually shot it there for a feature and, hoping to get a cover. And, I got an email, and, he was excited. He's like, this is going to be my first cover. I'm excited, blah, blah, blah. Well, unfortunately, he wasn't with the magazine very long and left, and it never ended up being a cover, making the cover of the magazine. Well, when you're told it's the cover, you tell your parents and friends and everybody's looking for the magazine. You're waiting for it. And there's some other people that got, and it was kind of a sore subject there. Well, I'd went to Resolutions it was Resolutions 2001 I went to.
Okay.
And while I was there, I ran into Lance, and Lance, he tells me, he's like, hey, I know this is I know you're a little irritated, da-da-da. And he says, I can still run the photos, but I can't put it on the cover, explain this stuff to me. And he says, I'll tell you what, if you bring that to LA, I'll guarantee you a cover.
Yeah, because he knew, like, the truck was sick, and he's just saying, he's thinking, okay, because a lot of factors come in, the lighting, the background, a lot of these things. So he's like, okay, if you can come here, we can shoot this thing.
Right.
reshoot it.
So I mentioned I was adding graphics and changing some things up. And, so I kept in touch with him, and I took it there to Resolutions in 2001, and I had the graphics the next year in 2002, I'd had the graphics and added the chrome Phantom grille. I just thought it needed chrome on the front end with the graphics. So I always tried to change the truck up like every year. I was always doing more and more to it. Well, anyways, I made it down there to LA, got shot for the cover of the magazine, and, I was stoked, and that's kind of where it came about. I mean, it was just, I think people like him, telling me, hey, I'll put this on the cover, and people, seeing the truck at shows and, oh, this is my favorite truck. Oh man, this thing. So it just always kind of motivated me and drove me to, continually doing more and more and more and more. And I think sometimes people think that truck just like, I all of a sudden built this peach Mazda that was super detailed with lots of chrome and everything smooth shave and graphics. But that truck evolved over, like a few year period. Yeah. Like it just kind of evolved to what it was. It wasn't like I just tore it apart and the next year this thing was like, boom, here it is. It just gradually kept evolving to that, like I'd take a little bit off and have it chromed here, or take a little bit off and have this part chromed. And, I didn't have the money to build it all at one time, so
exactly. And I like I'm looking at a lot of the photos I'm going to save from Google Images, but like it had kind of, am I saying this right? It had the satin finish on a lot of the interior pieces. It just really had a really nice kind of almost a mix. I don't know if this will make sense, but like when I used to go to the VW shows or hit a show, your truck almost has that vibe to me of like the satin finishes and the VW / mini truck. I mean, it was clean, man.
Yeah, thank you. I've always been a fan of satin finished aluminum and stuff on the interior of vehicles. Mm-hmm. You don't get that reflection. You know how polished aluminum is. Yes. You touch it and it scratches. So if you satin finish it to begin with, you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
So that was kind of how I've always been throughout the years. So yeah, anyways, cool. That's where that thing came about. That's how it evolved to what it was. And, it was really cool, to be, on the cover of a magazine that, 12 people make a year. I feel fortunate that I was able to do that.
Yeah, and I'm going to pull my issue out. I know you sent me some photos, and we'll share some of those for, the folks that, the newer school guys. Now, I have to ask, some of the photos you sent, I tell you, man, a lot of people may not realize the truck did, in fact, change in a pretty big way. So tell us a little bit about the flat black with the green flames, the sick kind of smoothie wheels. I mean, dude, that to take it from what was the idea there? Were you just like, dude, I'm going crazy again? Or was there something that led to it? Because, I love it both ways, but the convertible is just sick, man.
Yeah, that's kind of a funny story. So it got done being peach, and after it was on the cover, I started driving it everywhere, driving it to shows, everything else. And you know how that goes. It gets chips and wear and tear. And so I decided that I'm going to take this thing apart again. And at that time, I wanted to do a green paint job with just covered in graphics.
Okay.
And so that's where the green flames and the color of the flames and the frame and stuff, that's the same color green. Originally, the truck was going to be green with a lot of graphics. So we took this, I called some friends over. In about 4 hours, we had this thing stripped to nothing, bag tagged.
Nice.
It was down to nothing.
Okay.
So this friend of mine, Scott Heller, he says, man, all the parts that you can see on this frame are smooth and shaved. He goes, under the cab, you should weld up all the holes and everything that are under there that nobody sees. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, well, if you want to weld, I'll grind.
There you go. The old school days when homies were trying to help each other out.
Right. So, I'm like, all right. So I start, grabbing, washers and stuff, welding up holes, filling in these holes and stuff. He's grinding. Next thing you know, about half a day goes by, and he's like, man, this is a lot more work than I thought. Well, that turned into, okay, I'm going to box in this cross member. I'm going to run all the wiring and fuel line and everything inside the frame. I'm going to put these little plugs in the frame, electrical plugs, so the valves just bolt on and plug in, and the taillights just come down and plug in. And so by the time I got done with the chassis, which was about 3 months later, that we thought was going to be a couple weekends, I was kind of tired of working on the truck, So the chassis was all done, and the body's still sitting there.
Now you're now the fun starts.
Right, like this is there, and I've had the idea of making a convertible truck for years, of making that truck a convertible, but when the top was off, for it to look like a roadster cut windshield, and then when the top was on, you couldn't tell that it was a roadster. So, I ended up cutting the top off, and then the top portion of the windshield opening, I actually took and bent a piece of metal up that came down and met the windshield, or the chopped windshield, and clamped against the top portion of it. So when the top was on, you couldn't tell really that the thing was cut as a roadstered windshield. And there's not a whole lot of pictures of that floating around, because every time I take it to a show, first thing I do is take the top off.
I'll have to get some photos, because I'd love to see it, man, and share them. If you do have any of them.
Yeah, I do. I have to dig some out, but I'll definitely get some to you.
We got time.
And so I got that portion done, and we used to have this show in the Northwest called Drop Zone, a great big show. Yes. And when I was there, I went to lunch with some friends, and they were asking about the truck, because originally that's where I wanted to get it done and take it to. And so as we were at lunch, I told them, they were asking about it, and I said, man, I've kind of had this idea, like that scene of white walls and the flat paint and everything was starting to become really popular. Mm-hmm. And I told them, I said, I've kind of been thinking about shooting this thing a flat black, putting some whites on it, like maybe on some Toyota wheels, and throwing a Mexican blanket over the seat and running it like that for a little bit, just to get it back in one piece. And then, then taking it, back apart and painting it green and graphic in it. Well, they were like, oh man, you should do that. That'd be cool. So right after Drop Zone, I went home and started, doing the body work that I needed to finish up. And I shot this thing flat black. And well, my friend Scott worked at Les Schwab Tires, which is a big tire place here in the Northwest.
Okay.
And I was looking for some wheels, some Toyota wheels or something to bolt on it, because it had been 5-low converted. And he called me and says, hey man, I can't find any wheels, but I can get these smoothie wheels for you for like $40 a piece, or they make them in chrome for like an extra $3. And I'm like, well,
that's crazy by today's standards.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, let's get the chrome ones, So, so I got these chrome wheels, and he goes, man, there's these really cool center caps that are kind of a bullet, and they fit in those wheels. So I ended up getting these bullet caps and got the white walls on there. They were like those porta walls, fake white walls. Yes. Put those things on there.
They look good.
And and we bolted those things on and stood back with that flat black paint, and laid the truck out on the ground, and we're like, man, this thing's way cooler than we thought it would ever look, So I had this shop that I was working at. There was a kid there that was a helper, and he had a Mazda pickup, and we were talking one day, and I go, man, this thing would be cool. I said, I wish I had the money. I'd throw a tuck and roll interior in this thing, like some of the old hot rods, and he goes, well, if you help me bag my Mazda, I'll pay for the interior.
Boom.
So I sketched up some ideas, went to the upholstery shop, had this black and white tuck and roll interior made up for it.
Oh, dude, it's so classic too, because I'm looking at one of the photos, and man, it really popped, didn't it?
It did. It was really cool, and I wanted to tie some of the green into the exterior of the truck. So I come up with this idea to put the green flames on there, run them on the bottom. The bottom of the hood was smooth. The firewall was smooth. I wanted to run them on the bottom of the hood, this firewall and all that. So, and then I made, from the time it was pieced to flat black, I made this smooth dash for it, and taken all the controls off the steering column. They were all under the front part of the seat. Driver's seat, you just reach between your legs and turn the lights and all that on. Well, anyways, I put the flames on there, and I really wanted to take it to Oktoberfest. That was a Severed Tie show, back in like maybe the early 2000s,
yeah,
mid
early
2000s.
2000s. Yep.
Right. And so it was a few days away, like 3 days from us leaving to this show.
Mm-hmm.
And I just finished up the flames. I was putting the purple pinstriping around the flames on the firewall, and I leaned over the engine compartment doing that. And my knee had put a little dent underneath the body line of the front fender.
Oh, man.
And yeah, and so I was thinking, oh man, this flat black, this is hard to touch up. You know, I don't know, you know, I was kind of freaking out. Well, at the time I had a new Beetle, and I two-toned it and used this aluminum strip down the side of it to separate the two colors. Mm-hmm. And I had a chunk of that sitting there on the shelf, and one of the guys I worked with went and grabbed that and held it up right there at the body line. And he goes, hey, why don't you put this on here or something like this to cover up this little ding, and, you know, push it out as best you can. And it'll look like the old 44s or Cadillacs. Give that little belt line trim. So next thing you know, I'm heading to the hardware store, buying aluminum and some 3M tape, make up and polish up this little belt line trim and put the trim down the side of it. And, you know, it just kind of, once again, evolved to what it was, you know. And man, like standing back and looking at it, my friends and I, we thought it was the coolest thing ever. We were just like, man, this thing's like just like nothing you've seen before, you know, like we got this old hot rod, white walled mini truck, tuck and roll interior. And, you know, I got to tell you, I was excited to take it to Oktoberfest, but I was actually nervous as could be because I didn't know how people were going to take it. You know, I really didn't, you know, here I've got this peach graphic cover truck that I cut up, you know, or changed, and now it's just flat black with wide whites and small 15-inch wheels and, you know, tuck and roll interior and whatever.
Exactly. And you're thinking, you know, you're not sweating, but you're kind of like, man, are people going to think I'm insane? Like, you're feeling good, but you're like, man, people are going to think I'm insane for doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And so we pull in there, and at that time, there wasn't really trucks built like that. You know, nowadays you see that kind of stuff quite a bit, but they weren't even sure where to put me in a class. You know, they didn't want to put me in with the painted trucks because they were afraid that if I beat somebody with paint, that they were going to bitch like, hey, this truck's not even painted, you know? And so they ended up putting me in under construction, which I really didn't care.
Yeah.
And, you know, it amazed me because I hadn't been back to a big show since it was on the cover of Peach, and taking it there, I never realized how many people read and paid attention to Mini Truck Magazine or even any other magazine.
Yeah, because they saw the motor. Like, for instance, I'm looking at, you know, anybody that, like myself, that really read the magazine, like they saw the motor and they're like, okay, I know this truck. Were you kind of amazed at that?
Yeah, I really was. People would come up and they'd look at it and see the engine or maybe the rear bridge, because the bridge at the time had graphics in it and everything.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and they look at the truck and they go, this your truck? And I'm like, yeah. And is this the Peach Mazda? I'm like, yep. And some guys were just, you know, like, oh my God, this thing's so cool. And then some guys like, oh man, that was my favorite truck. I can't believe you did this, you know? And so it was kind of a mix between the two. Well, you know, you're talking about people recognizing things. Chris, or Body Drop, that was on Monster Garage way back when. Okay. I'd met him prior to Rezzo's that I'd went to when it was Peach. Well, he walked up to it and was looking at the engine and stuff. And, you know, he's like, this your truck? And I'm like, yeah. And he says, you know the guy from Washington with the Peach Mazda? I'm like, yep. And he goes, I knew it, man. I knew it. He built this intake for you, huh? And I'm like, this is the same truck. And he looks up at me. He's like, no way, man. I'm like, oh yeah. So I started going over some stuff with him and talking about the truck. Well, there was another guy with him at the time, and he was asking me questions about the truck. And he says, well, I heard you talking about, you know, Courtney, you know, is Courtney wanting to shoot the truck? And I go, no. And everybody kept telling me, which I never ran into him at the show, but everybody kept telling me that Courtney was interested in buying the truck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Joe Bernardo with the Joe Millionaire truck was parked next to me, and he says, hey, Courtney was here again looking for you. You know, he wants to buy this truck. And I wasn't there's no way I'd sell it at that point. But
yeah, but it still was yes, it was pretty cool because that's something that Courtney would have loved. I mean, obviously it makes sense.
Yeah, it was really cool. And so the guy that was with, Chris or Body Drop, he says, well, Courtney can buy it. I just want to shoot it for a feature.
And that was Brian.
And that I looked over and I looked up at his hat, and his hat says Street Trucks Magazine on it. And he says, Brian McCormick, Street Trucks Magazine. And man, I was like blown away. I was
boom.
like,
because you just re-brought it out. It's this different color, and then you could right there it clicked that, dude, it's resonating. People they like it, and he had the eye.
Yeah.
I mean, he did so much work, and he shot it, and then it came out in February 2004 issue.
Yeah, and I had been a fan of Brian's for a long time. Just his beastie cruiser Blazer that he built and other things. His old S10 Blazer. I knew the name, I knew of him, knew his builds, and it was cool. It was, cool to see another photographer that I'd never met or knew, say, hey, I want to shoot this truck. I love it. I want to shoot this thing. I want to get it in a magazine, and so at that point I kind of went, okay, this is cool. And because it went over so well and people liked it, that flat black with the tuck and roll and the white walls, it never did end up getting the bright green with the graphics. So,
well, rightfully so. I think the wheels were awesome, and it's crazy because even like those, the bullet caps, like those became so popular, like Mob Steel sells them. You see them on Lincolns all the time. You were kind of ahead in terms of a mini truck, in my opinion, with the wheels, the white, even the portal walls, the black flat paint. Then you did the convertible. The engine was already clean. Not many people would take an iconic truck like that and do what you did. But to me, I'm not going to say it was better because everybody has their own opinions. Right. But I give you like the stamp of approval and say, man, you kicked ass. And then the feature was named way back. Of course, Brian McCormick shot it. It had that classic, just kind of laid out there on the pavement. So here's where the story goes then. Now, what happens to this truck? I mean, do you still have it? I haven't seen this thing in forever.
Well, it's kind of funny because after that, the truck has sat for a while. Kids get older. I started doing more stuff with my kids, and the truck kind of just, sat there. And the polished aluminum started getting oxidized, up there in the Northwest, all the moisture. Mm-hmm. And that kind of stuff. And the flat black got faded. So I ended up selling it to a good friend of mine, Doug. And Doug had it for a while. And then he went through a little bit of life troubles and that, and called me up one day. He's like, he started rebuilding it.
Okay.
So right in about the middle of that, he calls me up and he says, hey, you interested in buying this truck back? And I'm like, yeah. Sure, So I bought it back. So I bought it back again, and I started rebuilding it and that, and about the time I started rebuilding it, I started my own business full time. Things started going. I didn't have time and all that, and then I ended up selling it to another guy that I'd known forever, and then he had it, and then he went through some troubles and sold it to another guy, and they were excited, and they started rebuilding it. And then somebody kind of talked them into, man, you should put this thing back to peach. Man, you should put this. So next thing you know, they're stripping it down, all that years of different colors, paint and body work. And the thing had been wrecked a couple times and fixed. And, I shaved the door handles in 1990, it was work quality, back then that I thought was great. Wasn't so much now. And they got tired of everybody coming over and saying, oh man, how's Billy Bob's truck coming? How's Billy Bob's truck coming? And they realized this will never be our truck. So it ended up, it's kind of sad, in a way, but I'm kind of relieved in a way, but it ended up getting parted out and cut up, and the truck's no more. So, it's kind of just one of those things that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Now I know a guy that's got half the truck hanging on a wall. It's wall art. Mm-hmm. So, I know that there's a lot of people that are, my God, why would you do that to a truck? Why would you do that? But it's in reality, it's his truck or their truck. They can do whatever they want with it, you know?
Yeah, and it's true. Yeah. And I think, like, you have this iconic truck, and sometimes I've mentioned the story a couple times, but there's some trucks where, you know, people say they don't want anyone else to have it, but at the same time, there are other trucks. I've seen a few recently where people are like, I'm rebuilding this thing, right? And I get it. Like, right. I mean, if you had some super rare Lamborghini and it was some rare car or whatever, but like mini trucks, sometimes, you know, what you've described is the heyday of mini trucking, in my opinion, where you put together a real badass truck a couple times. You didn't have $1 million in it, but you had a lot of badass work. And so sometimes it would be easier, like if somebody said, hey, Chris, you know, this was a badass truck and you really got the itch, you could go buy a Mazda pickup. You could lay it out with all new stuff, and then you could paint it flat black, cut the roof off, and then you would have a very similar truck. Sure, it's not the same one, but sometimes it's easier to do that.
Oh, yeah, and especially with, like, that truck, man. I you know, 3 different sets of tail lights over the years, and the flip-down license plate angled in the tailgate that had been taken out and welded back up, and the exhaust through the side of the bed on the driver's side that had been welded back. You know, the truck had gone through so much stuff that trying to strip the thing down and redoing the bodywork and stuff, it would have been easier to just go buy another Mazda that hadn't been touched and do what you wanted to do with it.
Yeah, and it's hard like for some of us to recognize that. But, you know, the good part is, you know, you had this truck, you enjoyed it, it got recognition. And, you know, when you were sending me photos the other day, I knew it had been featured, you know, several times. But, you know, when you start looking at it and you're like, okay, you know, mini trucking, and I think it was in sport truck as well.
Yes.
And then, you know, tailgate and then street trucks. It's like if you put that truck up to any other truck that had that much exposure, like my buddy Chris Gaddy, his Isuzu was featured. If it would have ran in street trucks, I think it would have ran in all of them. But if you put your truck up next to all these other famous trucks, it's not often that a truck gets what I say that much love, man. I mean, that truck was really, 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 it peaked at the right time, and it was in everything.
Yeah, that's, you know, I was just, I think, fortunate enough to be building that truck and be into the scene or mini truck scene at the right time. You know, it was, you know, there's a lot of other great trucks that deserve, you know, maybe just as much, but never got the exposure. But, you know, that's all I tell people. You know, I'm like, it just luck, I guess, you know. I mean, maybe not, but
yeah, well, it's hustle. It's, you know, when Lance said, hey, bring it to LA, you know, a lot of guys would be like, man, it's cool, but, you know, then you got to get the homies to ride with you, and, you know, it's a long drive and stuff. But, you know, not everybody recognizes, and this is what we try to mention on this podcast, is, you know, it was just your regular life. You know, you're a painter. I think the listeners have figured that out. I didn't say that at the beginning, but there was a lot of sacrifices that you made. It was those trips. It was going to those shows. It was, you know, if you weren't there at Oktoberfest and Brian wasn't there and you didn't meet him, then maybe it wouldn't have got shot. So there were a lot of sacrifices that you made to help motivate and push that truck, you know, over the edge, you know, to that next level.
Right. Yeah, that was pretty much, just like you said, that was my life for years. You know, it was work on the truck in the winter, show it in the summer, you know, and year after year after year, always trying to change it up, do something different. And if you look at the different features, you'll be able to pick out different things about the truck each time. Either the front end was different, or, you know, more of this was added, or like when it was flat black, it was in street trucks and it had flames just on the hood and the tonneau cover. But when it was in sport truck, it had more flames on the hood and tonneau cover that dripped over the tailgate and flames added to the sides.
Yep, and then when it was flat black, it had like the billet grill towards the bottom on the front. You know, when it was peach, it just had, you know, the regular bumper with the graphics on it, like those type things too.
Yes, and that's what I'm talking about. I always tried to change it up all the time, so it wasn't always the same truck. You know, not only that, but I have that, you know, what I call the AADD, the automotive attention deficit disorder, you know, to where, you know, what I think's cool for, you know, 2 weeks later, I don't think it's cool anymore.
Yeah, I know, right? That's cool. Well, thanks for sharing the history on that truck. What I wanted to kind of do is, you know, when I was looking on your Facebook and preparing for this interview, you had posted a buddy's Nissan 620 convertible truck. I think it was your buddy Dave, had a tilt bed. I mean, just, really a kick-ass truck. I mean, I'm going to share the photo of it. I'll tag him if he's on Instagram. I mean, it's really, really badass. What do you miss, and I know this is a loaded question, but what do you miss most about, those old school days where, you just, you're at Forbidden Fantasy now, but those old school days, what do you miss most?
I really miss the days of going to a show and not knowing what's going to be there. I really do. With the internet now, you see pictures of people's builds. It seems like, or you'll see pictures posted before you even get to the show. And you might have one or two vehicles. This is a surprise, but you already know what's going to be there.
Yeah.
Back then it was cool because if we drive to a show, you didn't know what somebody was working all winter, and you'd come to a show and all of a sudden somebody have this truck done, or they'd have their truck all repainted with different wheels and interior or something. You'd just be blown away when you saw it, and I think it was always that anticipation of what's going to be at this show. What am I going to see? And not only that, just it seems like simpler back then and more like you just go to have a good time. You weren't worried about whether people would like what you did. Now it seems like everybody's all worried about, back then you'd see crazy mods, crazy paint, paisley interior in something, just everything was so different and diversified because you didn't have that big social media internet that, you post a picture of something and you get, 50 people that liked it, but 300 people that would go, oh man, why did you do that? So people are scared to do something that's not out of the normal because they don't know if somebody's going to like it or not.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. And I think what's amazing to me when you were talking there, I thought about what the organization does with the Riddler Award. It's amazing that those
Yes.
builds can't be seen at all. And even
Right,
in this day of social media, I think that's the last of the Mohicans or whatever you say. It's the last of an era where they're going to be able to do that. So often, if builds have, sponsorships and things like that, then you've got people that are, you're trying to get exposure for those businesses. But you're right. Like in the mini truck days, I think we've highlighted that, you didn't need $1 million. You could have, you're a painter. So you could paint and then, your buddy helps you bag it or this or that. And all of a sudden, you had a truck that was pretty cool that you took to a show. It wasn't a truck that, the interior's getting done over here and this and this and this. And it just all kind of came together. So I get what you're saying.
Yo, what's up, Airhead Nation? It's Ron Perkins from Hammered Weekend Wear, and you're listening to Our Lifestyle, the podcast. Hey, after this episode, check out the fresh new gear we have over at HammeredWeekendWear.com. That's HAMMERD weekendwear.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, it's kind of like me talking about taking the truck flat black to Oktoberfest. Nobody'd seen it. Nobody even knew that it was coming. And so when I went there with it, it was just like, even though some people loved it and some people were like, oh my God, why'd you do that? It had a crowd around it the whole entire time because it was new. Nobody knew that it was going to be there, what to expect, that anybody's even going to do anything like that. And I do miss that about, back in those days before the big social media. I miss, seems like, like now, a lot of people, trailer vehicles, and I have trailer vehicles in the past, but, we used to drive stuff all the time and the big, long, 12,
Caravan.
15. Oh yeah. The caravan going to the show and the store, people breaking down. And that was just part of the fun, that was part of your story and adventures, and I mean, I could talk for days about, trips and shows and stories and how I met this guy or saw this truck first or,
Yeah.
and, it was just, I don't know. I still enjoy shows. Don't get me wrong. I really do. And I still enjoy, even here at Forbidden Fantasy, there's some neat stuff out there. And, and I see a lot of, brand new trucks. Hey, they got big wheels and a custom chassis or whatever, but they're bone stock truck laid out on big wheels and whatever. And to me, it's kind of like, hey, that's cool, but there's no creativity in that thing, I honestly, if it was mine, I probably wouldn't even take it to a show, and I'm not trying to knock anybody that does that because, I can't afford, I can't afford personally to go buy a brand new truck and do that to it. And I see some of them and I'm like, man, I'd love to have that thing, that would be so dang cool. But I do miss the old, wild paint, man, I did this weird mod or I did this. And it just seemed like back then people weren't as afraid to just go out on a limb and try something and do something, that nobody done or that they hadn't seen or, and I do kind of miss that about the old time, the old school or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And I'm going to tie in here in a second, Wabi Sabi, but one thing that I wanted to comment on that I think it's important is I think the day and age that we live in, I've kind of alluded to this in the past, but it's almost like, we all have like a bucket list, whether it's a list or it's a mental list. And we all, there's certain things we want to do. You can be a guy that inherits a lot of money now, or, maybe you're well off, whatever. And you can say, it's September 1st. I want to go to this SEMA show, they call it. I want to go to SEMA. I want to have, and you can get on and it's nothing against, because there's people that, they get on the phone, whether they do a lifted or they do lowered, and within, 6-8 weeks they can have something built. And again, this is no slight against anybody, but I think that's the age we live in. And, back in the old mini trucking days, we talked about with your truck, the evolution, it took my truck a long time. I didn't really ever think like to even take my S10 to SEMA. It just, I don't know, the best way I can describe it is it seems like we're in a day and age where like things, you can just get whatever you want. And it's like, if you want a SEMA build, you just make a few phone calls and then in a couple months it's done. So I totally get that.
Yeah, and it's funny you talk about SEMA because when my truck was peach, just shortly after, like a few weeks after I ripped that thing apart, going to change it, my buddy Ron calls me, Ron Perkins, and he says, "Hey, you interested in having your truck at SEMA?" And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, and it, he's always worked for like truck accessory centers and stuff. He's like, well, we'd like to put it in the Jim Top Lear booth. And I'm like, oh man, I wish you'd have called about a month ago, So my opportunity there to have a truck in SEMA kind of, I kind of took it away from myself. But
yeah, and
I just thought
exactly. Like I want, like this next build I'm working on, like I want to take it to SEMA. I think it's really awesome.
Oh yeah.
And to your point, I think it's just one of those things. We live in a society where, if you've got money and the connections, you call the right guys, and there's businesses. I mean, like I know a few that do lifted trucks, and that's what they specialize in, man. Like we know the right guys to call and stuff. So I think it's definitely lucrative, and I think it's cool. But yeah, I know that there's that, there's just the way life is now. And
yeah, it's just a change of times is all it is. Yes.
Yeah. And like what you were saying a little while ago, so I'm sitting here scrolling and I'm like, this is my next loaded question. When you look at the photos that John O'Neill, like Johnny O, that he took of the 62 Datsun NL320 Wabi Sabi, this was back in September 2014. It ran with it's on .com. I'm looking on the Truck Trend Network right now. That truck,
it was a feature in Truckin' magazine. Yes,
and Truckin'. There you go. That truck to me. It has a word that really stands out to me is character. I mean, this thing has a sick paint job, patina style. I want you to talk about it here in a second. I love the interior, the black and red. It's got the old, I don't know if it's like tuck and loop, but it's like that 50s, 60s style carpet. I mean, tell us a little bit about Wabi Sabi, man.
Well, I've always wanted one of those NL body style Datsuns, the old pickup that originally I didn't even know what they were called. But I knew it looked like a station wagon with the back end cut off. It was all unibody, has the cool long tail lights. And, I'd seen a couple in mini truck, and there was the blue one from, I believe, Texas that was on the cover. And, and I just was like, man, I'd love to have one of those. Well, we talked about the 620 that my friend Dave had owned, and he was there visiting with me, and we got to talking. And anyways, he told me he knew where one was, and so I bought the thing sight unseen, and it was a lot worse than what I thought. So, running a full-time business, I didn't have the time. I wanted to build it, like nice,
Yep,
like I usually built things. And I didn't have the time to do that. So another friend of mine had asked if I could do a patina style paint job on something. And so because the truck was dented, needed a lot of body work and everything, I thought, well, this is the great thing to practice on, to kind of perfect the technique.
Uh-huh.
And you can actually tell if you look at the truck and look at doors and tailgate compared to like the body and stuff. As I went, I kind of, refined the technique and got, it a little more down to where I wanted.
Yeah,
but,
I can see, actually. I'm looking at the photos now. I see what you're saying.
You kind of, like by the time I was done, I was like, all right, now I know what I need to do, what steps to take and kind of that. It was kind of my learning canvas, as so to call. So, it had the centerline wheels and they were oxidized and, it was a project that was started, but some of the work was pretty, so I had to redo the whole back, air, the bridge and bracing and gussets and a lot of it, floorboards. And I fixed everything structural with it, but didn't fix anything else, dings, dents, all that, bullet holes in the side of the bed that had been shot in it. And,
but to me, that's what makes that. It's what makes that truck.
Yes.
I mean, that is a build that's like, it kind of, you just look at it and I'm going, dude, like if you bring this out to a show right now, right? Any show you go to, you have to get so much love on this Datsun, man.
And it amazes me. That thing sits in my garage and I look at it all the time.
And you're like, whatever.
And I'm like, man, I hate the paint job on it. I want it not, and I've actually acquired about 6 months ago a really good body for that thing. And it will here pretty shortly, I say shortly, but it'll probably be a couple years. It's going to be nice. And I've had friends that go, why would you change it?
Yeah, it's almost like don't mess this one up. Build another one right next to it.
Build a new one, Yeah.
I'm telling you, because
pretty much.
It's taken on a life of its own. And, on the back, it even says Wabi Sabi. The photos I'm looking at that Johnny O shot, it has like the vintage license plate from 63. Like you said, It's got the centerline smoothies, which I think centerline is gone now. So those wheels are harder to get.
Yes. And, because of the look of the truck, it's kind of, we talk about my builds evolving, like the peach to what it became, the flat black, this happened, so I added this came about, so I did this.
Uh-huh.
And the build of that truck, I knew I wanted the patina paint job and the doors logoed, and my shop was right across the street from a really just excellent upholstery shop that did high-end upholstery, and we swap out work. That's why where the upholstery and carpet came. That's why the upholstery is 10 times nicer than the rest of the truck, So,
well, and to me, and I know you as a painter guy, right, and do maybe dabble in some body work, but to me, when you look at, and I talk about this a lot, the C10 community, those guys are hitting on all cylinders, and you'll see these trucks, and I don't know what it is. I just love seeing something like this where you look inside and the interior is totally done. Sometimes you'll open the hood and you'll see in this thing, the engine's clean and everything, but you'll see guys they'll paint the whole engine bay. And I don't know what it is, but I do think that style is pretty badass, man. So the interior on this thing is top notch.
Yeah, the interior is just beautiful. That was done by a place called Holcomb's Upholstery there in Aberdeen, Washington. And, just beautiful job. Beautiful. Originally I knew I wanted the seats and stuff, door panels done. And, I kind of talked to I always know what I want done, what colors, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I wanted something that looked like a deluxe interior that would have came in that truck. Mm-hmm. And, originally they came with a painted floor and a floor mat. So I body worked the whole floor and tranny tunnel and everything, and section it for the other engine and tranny that was in it, and painted the floor red. Well, he brought this Corvette to us that needed some work done on the convertible bows, and I looked inside of it and I saw that black and red flecked tuxedo carpet in this Corvette, and I go, hey Charlie, this carpet in here, and he goes, yep, I can already get it. I knew as soon as you saw it, you were going to want it. He already knew, had the same idea as I did. So he ended up making that carpet kit that just finished the thing off.
Yeah.
And,
what are the controls like? So up underneath the dash, you've got the little, I'm guessing AC, you got the gray box and stuff like that. What is all that stuff?
that's all the factory heater that came in those trucks.
Ah.
Yeah, that interior is bone stock. The steering wheel, that they actually didn't come with that half chrome horn ring. That's actually out of the 312 Datsun car, which is the same steering wheel, only it has the chrome ring.
Ah, so you just pop that on there.
Yeah, so I did that steering wheel instead. The shifter, that they were column shift, most of them, and I actually notched that factory seat for the shifter because it has the engine and tranny out of a 240SX in it, not the old, whatever came in them. I don't even know what came in them.
Sick, dude. Yeah, I saw the engine and I was like, hell yeah, and the motor swap. I'm like, that's badass.
Yeah, so, the shifter was just some eBay shifter I thought was cool looking. Found the matching big mushroom knob to put on it that matched everything. And so basically interior, I wouldn't say stock because obviously the seat and the door panels aren't stock, but it looks like something that would have came back then. And that's what I wanted. And then as far as right. And as far as the name, you said Wabi Sabi. If you read the magazine, it kind of tells a story in there. But, one night I was watching an episode of King of the Hill and Bobby's trying to grow this rose, and the meaning of Wabi Sabi came up, which is the, Japanese art of finding beauty in imperfection. And I went, man, that's the perfect name for this truck, so that, there's the name Wabi Sabi that ended up on the tailgate, and there was 2 B's in there, and my business logo was always a backwards block letter B, and then the regular block letter B. So I incorporated those in there. The kanji symbols is the kanji symbols for Wabi Sabi that's on the hood. The rising sun that's on the hood of it, actually, when I was sanding down the primer, the black paint and primer that the truck was when I got it, I came across somebody'd already put a rising sun on the hood prior, so I thought it was cool.
Boom, yeah, I was going to ask you. Cool.
Yeah, and just incorporated it back into the thing. And the kanji symbols on the hood actually are backwards. And it was funny because my oldest son, Tristan, made the masks for me for that, and I stuck them on there and painted them. And then when he went to go make the kanji symbols for the tailgate, he noticed that they were backwards. He comes there, he's like, Dad, Yeah. And so I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, what better for a Wabi Sabi truck than to have the letters on the hood backwards?
Yeah, there you go, man.
It's imperfect,
That's what hot rodding's about, man.
Yeah, I was like, hey, we'll just tell people that so you can read it in your rearview mirror, I don't know. It's so, and it was cool at the time. The Mazda hadn't been around for a while. I'd taken a couple other things I built to shows, like hot rod shows and stuff. And, I wanted to go to a mini truck show, that Sitting Pretty show, and up there in Seattle. It was their last year, and I rushed to get the truck taken to it. And, I ended up getting it together, taking it there to the show. Johnny O shot it there, which was great. I'd never had anything shot by him, and he's an amazing photographer. So, I did that and got Mini Truckin's Choice and, a couple other awards. And it was cool to have a day like that. It really was, that I hadn't had in quite a while. So,
that's kick-ass, dude.
Yeah.
It really is. And someone like you that's a hustler, you've been, putting in work, so to speak, all these years and, traveling the shows and things. I love when someone like yourself can get that recognition that you deserve. Obviously, you had great success, many years, 10, 12, 14 years before with the other truck, couple iterations. But then to be able to come back and build something like this that really is different. We talked about that a little bit, and it just came together, man. All the planets aligned, as my dad would say.
Right. Yeah, and that's just another one of those things of just not worrying about what everybody else is doing, and just throw something together you like. Whatever you think's cool, and people message me or call me and they're like, hey, I got this idea. What do you think? And I'm like, well, what's it matter what I think, man? Do you like it? If you think it's cool, do it. Because if I wouldn't have took a chance and done my Mazda flat black with the white walls, it would have never happened. It wouldn't have made other people go, oh man, that thing's cool. Well, I'm going to put flat, it kind of made people go, oh, well, I can do this, build this truck on a lower budget. I don't have to have shiny paint. I can rattle can it or flat black it, or I can get, stock wheels with some, porta walls, or I can, so it was you just got to take chances and do sometimes what you think is going to be cool and not worry about what everybody else thinks.
That's it. And what's funny is, I'm a huge Lincoln guy, and I've been wanting to start this little kind of meme, but I don't want to like offend anyone, and it's nothing bad because my rendering on my 67 sedan, who my buddy rendered by Thor did, it's it's kind of a, well, I can't really tell if it's black, flat, or if it's shiny. I was kind of going for in between. But then, like with the Lincolns, it's like a lot of guys, it's a black Lincoln. It's Mob Steel, Detroit steel wheels. Love those wheels. It's AccuAir. It's all these certain things, and it's nothing against, because I love those cars. I'll look at them all day, but one of my buddies, a couple guys, started a hashtag not a black Lincoln. And it's no slight against black Lincolns because I love them. But it's just the funny part is that, when you have a Lincoln, a lot of guys are like, well, it's got to be black. You got to lay it out. Yep. Got to put AccuAir. Got to have Mob Steel wheels. And it's like, that is badass. But eventually there's going to be so many of them that they're not going to stand out as much. So, again, to all my homies out there that have those, it's no, warning shot. It's badass. I love it. But, you kind of get it.
Yeah, that's kind of like I was talking about, the brand new trucks with they got a custom chassis and big wheels. There's nothing against them. Like I said, I think they're badass, but there's too many of them, in my opinion, in it now. It's like, okay, I've seen that done, give me something else to look at. That's kind of, I think, along the same lines you're saying. It's not that you don't love that. I've seen that done now this many times, give me something new. Yeah,
exactly. So when I got my 64, and it was my favorite color, blue, and rest in peace to my dad. We loved the color blue, and his nickname was Papa Smurf. And I was like, I love the 60s. I love those like seafoam green colors and these different blues, and even the house, the architecture. I know like Max Grundy, he does awesome artwork, and there's just something about it. I'm not an artist. I'm not a painter. I can't do any of that. But there's certain things that kind of get my wheels moving, and that's kind of what the next question that I had for you, Chris, was, we mentioned, and we've kind of established to the listeners that you're a painter, you've got that painting background. But at what point in your life did you realize you had this artistic skill, and did you know that you were going to make a career out of it?
I think, like I mentioned, at the beginning, I saw that movie Corvette Summer, the thing was candy apple, had the flames, I kind of, from then on, that's just what I wanted. Gotcha. I was in high school painting friends, doing graphics on stuff, even though back then it was like the drips and, heartbeats down the side, that kind of thing. I wish I had pictures of some of that stuff.
I know, right?
I'd love to be able to look back then. No, not everybody carried a camera in their pocket.
That's funny.
Yeah. But, I did that kind of stuff, and, scallops and I still love scallops. Maybe because I, grew up in that era, and I've been waiting for them to kind of come back, which I haven't seen, and kind of surprised that I haven't seen them. Uh-huh. But, I love scallops. I did a lot of scallops and, flames, and I'm always, a flame guy, done flames. And, but I kind of, when the truck was peach and it was solid peach, I wanted the graphics, like the Cal concept style graphics and that. And, I was like, well, I guess it's time to give a go at it, and I mean, I've tried, kind of one of those guys that has never been afraid to try something, it's like, okay, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to mess it up and have to redo it, or, it's just metal, or it's just paint, it can be fixed. Yeah. And just always kind of tried to do that, and never tried to stay at flames, graphics, patina paint, tried to venture out and do different things, and not, I had a guy tell me one time that, you can always pick somebody, pick out their work because it all looks the same, like this is their paint, this is their flames. So I've always tried to keep that in mind and try different things all the time. So, I guess my whole life I've always just known this is what I want to do,
It's definitely smart. And the reason why I kind of asked that too is I like to reinforce to the listeners that, going back to the beginning conversation we had, it was, you saw a movie, you thought it was pretty cool. It's like sometimes in life it can be something that small that sparks a lifetime for you. I mean, think about it. All those years later, you're still doing that. When I saw my first mini truck, I knew I wanted to get into it. Or, I've been reading about Lincolns for years. and I'm staying with it. I'm going to be, hopefully 90 years old one day, and I'll be driving a a hover Lincoln, hopefully. But in all seriousness, I think it's pretty cool. We had, we've had a couple painters on, and I'm always kind of curious to talk about, even with Joe Vincent recently. We talked with him at Orange Beach Invasion, and he said the same thing. It was kind of like, don't pigeonhole yourself into one thing. We had Craig Fraser on, and he mentioned so many different facets of things that he's dabbling in, helping Disney with things and this and that.
Yeah.
And it's mind blowing because, to me, what you mentioned is it's smart business. It's not just let's not just be good at doing flames. Let's be able to do a lot of things. But I did want to mention that the homie, my severed ties brother, Jason Leckvold, I know that you had your hands. You talk about flames. That Mazda, you did the flames on that one, right, man?
Yeah, I did. I went over. I actually just laid the flame design out for him, and then kind of walked him through painting them.
Yeah, dude, they're classic.
That was actually kind of a fun project there, and I had actually met Jason. I met him a couple times before, but I really got to know him was Ron Perkins' DeBlaze build. I went over and teamed up with Jason. Jason painted the two-tone paint on that DeBlaze, and I did the chrome graphics and carbon fiber and all that on the side of it.
Okay.
And when I was there, I talked to him a couple times, but working with him, and that was we stayed up, I think, like 50 hours doing that. I mean, it was talk about a SEMA crunch. That was the SEMA crunch,
Yeah.
So we did that. We were like drunk, tired, using paint product I'd never used before. Stuff started peeling, and he started freaking out. And, I just gave me a straight edge. It's all going to be freehand from here on out, So we finished the project, kind of made that friendship bond. And, a little bit later, he called me up and he says, "Hey, I want some flames on my truck. What would you charge me to come do that?" I'm like, "Man, give me a place to sleep and feed me, and I'll come lay out for you."
Yeah.
So,
it's kind of like you help each other out, and that's great,
right,
man.
Right. And so, I came there and or flew over there and helped him and walked him through painting him, and he did a pretty good job, with not being a custom paint. He's a body and paint guy, like a collision painter. But, there's a big difference between that side of the industry and the custom paint side of the industry. And, he did a good job, and the truck got a lot of recognition and came out just awesome, I mean, it really did.
Yeah,
and
for it to be redone.
Around,
exactly. For it to be redone, right. Again, it kind of goes back to having that courage to just say,
yes.
Man, this thing is sick, but I'm going to do this, and we've kind of established that. And it's like, man, like one of my favorite movies, Back to the Future, Marty McFly's dad, it says, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. I'm like, dude, that's like words to live by. How basic,
Yep,
but it's true.
And I've given that pep talk to people before, my kids, friends. I'm like, I grew up in this little tiny town in Washington, and I'm like, if I can build a truck and get it on the cover of a magazine, anybody can, like,
it's just like focus, it's motivation. It's,
you got to stick to it and do it. It's not going to happen overnight, maybe, but eventually, if you want it bad enough, it'll happen. You'll do it.
Yep.
And that's just kind of how that goes, I guess.
Yeah, there's an old hip-hop song from the 90s, from the 90s from the West Coast, and there's some lyrics in it where he goes, "Ain't none to it but to do it." And I'm like, yes, sir, that's how we do, man. Well,
pretty much.
Kind of the last question I had as we start to wrap it up here is, what advice would you have, Chris, for, someone that's maybe, an up-and-comer, a young cat in the automotive scene, maybe they want to become a painter. You gave some good life tips, but, was there anything else that you would share that would say, run away or no, obviously not that. I'm just kidding. But, it's like, hey, stick to, but is there anything that, that you would share, man, as maybe any additional advice?
My advice would be, just if that's what you want to do, stick to it. The biggest piece of advice is never quit learning, ask questions, listen. to anybody and everybody. There can be a 15-year-old kid that'll walk up to me and start telling me about how he did something, and I listen and pay attention because I may learn something from that kid.
Love it.
And as soon as you think you know everything about what you do, you might as well quit because you've already lost. You're never going to know everything about what you do. And I guess that's the biggest piece of advice I can give. Learn, ask questions, read, gain knowledge. Always try to outdo yourself. And that's how you're going to get good. That's how you're going to, don't be afraid to try something new. Don't, just because this is the way everybody else does it, maybe you've got an idea that you think this is going to be better or this might be cool. Try it, because you might invent something or come up with a new technique or a new way of doing something and everybody goes, whoa, that's way easier. Oh
yeah,
man, why didn't I think of that a long time ago?
Exactly. And like even me, like I'm not by any means a professional at what I do in terms of this podcast, but I listen all the time to other podcasts. I listen to, even if it's somebody, on the news that's interviewing someone, it's like there's certain techniques or certain things. There's always a chance to get better. I often, recently I stumbled across some old audio from probably 2 years ago, and I just hit play because I was trying to delete some stuff on a memory card, and I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, that was me talking? No one, I'm just like, damn. But it goes to show, man, we can all get better. And, one thing I wanted to really push is I'm an Instagram junkie, and, Chris, Billy Bob Mull is on Instagram. You can find him. It's Billy Bob all together and then _who. He's got a few photos in here. We're, of course, going to be tagging him. He's going to love that over the next, I'll be on a cruise for a week. So once I get back, then we'll be, we'll post this episode. Now, I did want to ask you, too, one more thing. I noticed yesterday you posted the Space Cab Isuzu.
Yes.
And it's that was a really, really cool truck. Is that one of your buddies, or I was just curious because I love that truck.
Yeah, that's my friend Paul St. Cyrs. I actually did a little work to it. I've been friends with him for years, like a lot of people in the Northwest here. There's a body line that goes, if you look at that truck, around the bottom of the roll pan. And, he called me up one day. He's like, man, I got this idea I've always wanted to do, and you think it could be done? I'm like, well, anything could be done.
Right.
So, I came over there and I helped him with that, and I helped him with a couple other things on it, and yeah, I mean that truck, he's worked on it over the years, and finally got done and get some recognition that the truck definitely deserves. And yeah, he's a good friend of mine. Helped me out quite a few times, and yeah, we drove down here to Forbidden together, and he actually drove that truck from Idaho. I know you said we traveled down from Washington at the beginning, but
yeah,
I actually live in, it's okay. I actually live in Boise, Idaho area now.
That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah. Because when your number came across, I think 360, maybe that's what threw me off.
yeah, it probably did throw you. But I live there now. I have for about 4 years now, or going on 4 years. And he actually drove that thing down here from Boise, Idaho to the Forbidden show. So, which is about a 13-hour drive by the time we gas and stop. And there's a lot of people sending him a message, and they're like, "You're driving that thing?" He's like, "Well, why not?" That's it. So
I was going to say, give him a fist bump for me, because
man, definitely do that.
That right there is, that's legit, man. And it goes back to a lot of the stuff we talked about. Drive the stuff. I know I'm like, with my Lincoln, I'm like, I'm driving this thing. I'm not building no crazy, trailer queen or anything like that. I want to really enjoy it. And, it's easy to say in all these interviews that it's been a pleasure, but I mean, I'm telling you, the way this one flowed, we had a lot of great conversation. The crazy thing is, we could probably keep going on and on and on. There's so many trucks. I mean, Blue Ignition was the Mazda we talked about that was Lech Folds. We talked about your 62 Datsun. We talked about the Mazda. You've had your hands, Chris, in a lot of builds over the years. We didn't really get a chance to talk, a lot about the TV stuff and some of the little things you've done. But I think, the listeners are going to look back and say, man, for this hour and 20 minutes, we really, really, really touched on some badass topics. And I kind of wanted to just ask you, like, was there anything else that you wanted to share with the Airhead Nation?
Yeah, I'd really like to say that, I'm thankful to, anybody and everybody that's, supported me over the years, like, as far as buying a t-shirt or hat or just commenting, and saying, man, I love that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you're a hustler, man, and you've built some iconic stuff, and that's not what defines us, but I think it's the mix of, you seem like a really good down-the-earth guy, and I think that's what we need, man. We need people to be cool, that we can slap hands with, we can talk, and, really, what's the word I'm looking for? Network with, and that's what we're doing with the podcast. I mean, look up Chris Mull on Facebook. We've got him in the Airhead Nation group on Facebook. So once this episode drops, we'll be kind of tagging you. And, like I said, man, it's really has been a pleasure. It's always good syncing up with new people. And I know you're anxiously awaiting out there to start slapping hands with all the homies at Forbidden Fantasy. But, man, we really appreciate your time, Chris.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's been really enjoyable, talking with you, chatting with you, sharing a few stories about, back in the past. And like you said, I could go on for probably days or weeks, maybe even.
I know, right?
Well, yeah. I really do. I appreciate it, and as, you asked if there was anything else I'd like to mention, I'd like to throw out there, if you see me someplace, at a show or out and about, don't be afraid to come over and, introduce yourself, say hi. I know in the past, some people kind of get intimidated sometimes, but I'm just an everyday guy like everybody else. It's, I built a famous truck. It's a big deal. So,
I love it.
It's like come up and say hi, whatever. I'm kind of when it comes to social, sometimes I've got a hair bit of social anxiety. So, I may not go out of my way to say hi to you. But, don't be afraid to come up and say hi.
You know it, man. Well, dude, I cannot wait to meet you. I always joke with my buddy Chris Gaddy. I tagged him on that Isuzu photo just a few minutes ago because he's a big Isuzu fan. I said, man, if I ever start a mini trucking encyclopedia, we're going to set Chris down. But now we got Chris Mull as our West Coast Connect because I'm telling you, we'll tell Chris Gaddy, we'll say, hey, what about this truck? He's like, well, I remember it was this, and then at this show they did this. I'm like, man, I thought I knew a lot, and he's taught me a lot.
Man, I could tell you the same thing. Yep.
Yep.
I could do the same thing over here. Yep.
Yeah, and I've learned from him a lot over the years. I'm sure he listens to the podcast. He's like, see, I remember back in 1997, I taught him that. And I'm like, yeah, so I got to give him a little nod. He's a good dude. But,
yeah.
Well, hey, listen, thank you so much, man. Dude, really, really enjoy the Avi and the whole ambiance out there at Forbidden. I know I'm going to be hitting the cruise tomorrow, so it was great that I had today off. We could get this episode nailed down because the Airhead Nation does not like to wait. So when I get back next week after Bob Grant's, we're going to follow up milestone episode 60 with Chris Billy Bob Mull. Dude, it's been a pleasure, man. I just want to say we got you.
Thank you.
Slobs out